Why, hello there, old sports. Now, obviously, just saying Five Nights at Freddy's has a lot of potential it doesn't capitalize on is by no means a hot take, and that sort of idea can be applied to pretty much any media franchise or any media in general. You could also argue that when it comes to media franchises with smaller teams heading them, it becomes even easier for potential to be lost, because you have less perspectives looking at various ideas, and then obviously thinking of different ways to explore said ideas. Now, to get back on track, I state all of this to make it clear that I don't think it's necessarily wrong that Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't capitalize on lots of its potential, and I want it to be clear that I do think that is something that will inevitably happen with any media. But I do feel like Five Nights at Freddy's, at least in its little corner of indie horror, is the king of coming up with really cool ideas and then not doing anything with them. So today, in this video, I kinda just want to talk about some of the parts of this series that I feel like should have been explored more, or unfortunately could have been explored more before they were, removed from the series. And to be fully transparent and honest, I really do love Five Nights at Freddy's. I just think that it could be better if it actually explored some of its cool ideas more. So this video isn't made out of a sense of hatred, it's made out of a sense of wanting the series to be better because I love it so dearly. Now, the last two things I want to mention before starting the video proper is that I'm not going to be covering Security Breach much because that game could justify a video about its missed potential by itself. And then also, if you end up liking this video at any point, please consider liking and subscribing as it really helps me out in the algorithm. So, thank you. And with that, let's begin properly. Now, at least for me, whenever I think of Five Nights at Freddy's and missed potential, the second thing I think of behind Security Breach is the missing children and their characters, or lack thereof. I would pretty confidently guess that if you sat someone down who didn't know about Five Nights at Freddy's and explained the basic premise to them, they would probably assume that the two most important and most relevant groups in the story are the murderer, aka William Afton, and his victims, the missing children. Now, while I do feel like William does live up to that, which does make sense considering he is the main antagonist of the whole franchise, I feel like the missing children barely have any characterization at all. Yes, as a group, they probably have like one or two vague character traits, but I feel like that doesn't really make a fleshed out character. Now, you could argue that anyone who doesn't have the surname Afton in this series is very much underdeveloped, and I would agree with you, but I guess for now I just want to talk about the missing children. One thing that really bothers me about the portrayal of the murdered children in all of the Five Nights at Freddy's media is how they're kind of split into two groups. There's kind of what I'm just going to call the horde of angry, nameless, angry creatures. I said angry twice there because that's pretty much all the character they have is just, I'm angry. And then you have the actual character off to the side, usually that is the person haunting Golden Freddy, and then that's about it. Maybe they get to be a bit more mysterious, so you have the mysterious one, and the angry group of like 4 or 5 kids. That's not really characters, those are just like plot devices. Honestly, I feel like you could almost make an argument that there isn't any tragedy about these kids going missing anyways, because I feel like part of the reason this series is so tragic is because these children had their lives stolen away from them. But if these kids don't have any interests or personality, what's the tragedy of them dying? Just make another kid. Okay, now obviously I'm being a bit hyperbolic there, and it makes sense that we don't really learn about what Jeremy's favorite color is or anything, because he's pretty busy being angry at being murdered, which, justifiable, I'll give them that. But I feel like beyond Susie, who is the kid haunting Chica, the series never even gives any of these kids a time of day. And I feel like Susie only gets any focus because she gets to be the not leader of the missing children, but she basically gets to be the kid that the series is like, okay, well, we vaguely hinted that one of these kids is sad about being dead. Stop bothering us. One of my favorite Fazbear Fright stories, and I guess when I say one of my favorite, I mean one of my only favorite Fazbear Fright stories, is the story Coming Home, where we kind of get some perspective on Susie's ghost, who's kind of just lost and confused, while her family is having to deal with the fallout of her disappearance and death. And I feel like this is why there's missed potential here, because you could explore the characters who are family to the missing children, or just loved ones of the missing children. You could explore how this is hurting them, how they're handling these losses, how they're grappling with how things have changed. But the series doesn't do any of that. It just keeps saying, I just feel like it keeps going back to Afton and saying, well, he did this, 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 and this. This is the only thing that matters. And if anything, I feel like, okay, this is probably I'm probably not going to say this very well. I've tried to write out a script to say it, but I think I'm just going to try to wing it. I feel like the thing with Afton is that the more focus you give onto him, the more you give him legitimacy, if that makes any sense. Now, I'm not saying he did anything justifiable by any means, but I'm saying the more focus you give onto him, the more you're kind of giving him the time of day, when if anything, he should be the least important of the main characters, because what should matter is the victims. But then again, maybe I'm thinking about this too much. I guess my point is that, like, even though these are fictional characters, obviously, they're not real victims of any real crime, I just feel like the missing kids deserve to be more than just a tally on William Afton's board of people he's killed. I know people joke about this a lot, but in Ultimate Custom Night, when the one you should not have killed becomes a major player, I feel like that title could be worded better, because I feel like it kind of takes away more characterization from the missing kids, because apparently this is the only one William shouldn't have killed, and I guess it means in a sense that it's like, oh, this is the one who's angry that is going to make you suffer for all eternity. But I feel pretty confident that Scott Cawthon, being a very Christian man, has hell as a canon concept in his fictional universe. So I feel like regardless of if this kid is mad or not, William is going to get the punishment he deserves. Just a hunch. Now, the other major thing about the one you should not have killed that kind of annoys me is the fact that that's kind of their whole gimmick, is that, oh, who is this mysterious person? They're not really explored as a character. All we know about them is that they're angry and they want William to suffer. But again, I'm pretty sure everyone else wants that as well. FNaF in general has a problem of not exploring characters or concepts to their fullest potential and kind of just leaving them to rot, because the thing is, if you have to explain and explore something, that means you can't milk it as a mystery later, and it's going to sell a lot more crappy books if you don't know what's going on and you think that this might be the clue that gives us the answer. But if you explore and explain something, that's it. The mystery's over. However, I do fully admit, this may just be me kind of disagreeing with how FNaF tells its story compared to my personal preference in storytelling techniques. I guess my problem is just that I feel like these kids aren't actual characters of their own, they're just a statistic. I feel like Gabriel could be swapped out with Fritz in any minigame and no one would tell the difference unless they had their character masks on, and only then, it's only as relevant as, oh, what robot do they possess? Who they are doesn't matter. Now, to defend FNaF for a moment here, because I feel like that's only fair, I feel like the missing children were a lot more of an active player in the story back when the first few games were coming out in the Click Team series, and those games were a lot more mysterious due to just the size of the game and the scope of the story. But as both of those have expanded, I feel like there's not really a good excuse as to why they aren't explored, except for the fact that they're probably out of the story and in the afterlife. How to the ever! I do think it is really funny and kind of plays into my point here if the Molten MCI theory is true, because again, they're kind of stripped of their individuality and only reduced down to just a blob of metal. So, good job, Scott, I guess. I just feel like for main characters, these characters should be more of characters. And speaking of main players in the story, while the release of the second Five Nights at Freddy's movie has complicated our view of Michael Afton and his morality, I still do feel confident in saying that he is the main character of the series, or at least main protagonist. Technically, I would argue that William is the actual main character, even if he is an antagonist. However, obviously that's besides the point. I just wanted to bring up that since Michael Afton is the main protagonist of the series, and our player character most of the time debatably, I do think it is kind of unfortunate that he isn't fleshed out very much outside of a children's activity book. Now, at least in the first 2 or 3 Five Nights at Freddy's games, the player character wasn't really that important as a character. They were mostly just supposed to be an everyman that you could see yourself in, because the point was just that, hey, wouldn't this be scary? It didn't really feel like our player character was as important to the plot. They could usually be swapped out with some random Joe Schmo. However, with the release of FNAF 4, and I'd argue more importantly FNAF's sister location, our player character became a lot more important as a character. While in the first two, and to a lesser extent 3, I feel like the player character was more kind of built to be the butt of the joke, because it kind of was just a situation of, well, you keep coming back because you need the paycheck, the job market sucks. But lots of time is spent in sister location by Baby wondering why we're here in more of a serious way. And by the time of night 5, during the Ennard night, she even brings up that she thinks she knows who we are and exactly why we're here, to be with her again. And while by the end of sister location, I feel like lots of people just assumed we were playing as the murderer, aka William Afton, aka Purple Guy, I feel like the DLC for sister location with the custom night was meant to kind of bring us back on track and establish firmly that we are Michael Afton. Because at the end of night cutscenes, we see Michael walking down the street puppeted by Ennard until eventually Ennard is ejected, and Baby does some bullshit remnant stuff that brings him back to life. And then this all culminates with the Max Mode ending cutscene, where we actually get a speech from Michael.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
Now, unfortunately, besides the logbook, this is pretty much all of the good characterization we have for Michael Afton. And I feel like that kind of sucks because the activity book is more focused on trying to get the name puzzle stuff done rather than flesh out Michael as a character. Yeah, we learn more concretely that he was the FNAF 4 dreamer, he was the guy working at FNAF 1, all that stuff. We even learn a few little character tidbits about him, like how he likes gum and stuff like that, and he's kind of a bit silly. I feel like those are kind of just like character details, they're not really character traits. Hell, the fact that we're not even sure to this day beyond headcanon what his actual goals in the series are, I feel like that, again, kind of comes back to the whole idea of missed potential. I feel like Michael's characterization and the lack thereof is at its worst in Pizzeria Simulator, because while the first few games where you play as Michael were kind of meant to be more vague, this is the game about tying up loose ends, and we don't even hear Michael's voice. Hell, we're not even 100% sure we are Michael in this game. Henry, and to a much lesser extent Charlie, are kind of the main players in FNAF 6, at least character-wise, or character depth-wise, and that kind of sucks, because this is the last official appearance of William besides UCN, which is more of an epilogue, and I feel like Afton and his children don't really get to do much. Now obviously, yes, they're all burned in the fire, but I guess my problem is more that I feel like they don't really get any standout character moments. Really, like I said, the only person who does get a standout character moment is Henry with his speech at the end. And I'm gonna be a bit brutally honest here, but I feel like the Henry speech is kind of carried by hype moments and aura. It's not really, it's written well, but I feel like that could have been conveyed so many different ways. And I feel like the fact that Henry is giving this epic speech is one of the only ways it landed, or one of the only reasons it landed. And while with William, you can kind of go back to earlier in the timeline and flesh him out a bit more, like in Secret of the Mimic, because William's pretty much always been an active player. I feel like Michael's story has been pretty much entirely told at this point, so I don't really see a very high likelihood of him coming back in any substantial way. Therefore, it would be a lot harder to flesh him out more as a character. And again, I think this sucks, because missed potential. Is Michael a tragic hero trying to make up for the sins of his father's past? Is he a selfish man trying to put his own conscience to rest? Is he a puppet of William, being strung along and even helping with his crimes? I feel like any one of these potentials could be explored in so many wonderful ways, but instead it feels like we got nothing. Something I've thought about FNaF for a while is that while I really do love the official material and stories, almost just as much I love seeing how the fans take those ideas and then try to explore them in their own various ways. And I feel like Michael's a good example of that. There's so many things you can do with his character and so many ways you can take it as well, and if given enough love and care, I feel like all of them are good. In general, I guess I just feel like a lot of FNaF's narrative is carried by fan interpretations or fan headcanon, rather than what's actually given in the material itself. Sometimes it feels like FNaF is just this little blocks of building blocks that we can take and put together in our own separate ways. Now, I was originally going to end the video there, because I kind of wanted this to be a smaller video I could make as I'm trying to get out of a depressive episode I'm in. But then I realized, you can't make a Five Nights at Freddy's video about missed potential without mentioning Vanny. Now I know I said I wasn't going to mention Security Breach stuff, but let's be honest. If Security Breach is the Five Nights at Freddy's game with the most missed potential, Vanny is the Five Nights at Freddy's character with the most missed potential. Now, overall, I will try to keep this brief, as there are plenty of videos on Vanny that I feel like do a very good job explaining who she could have been as a character, so I would suggest you go watch those. But I guess for today's purposes, I just want to bring up that I feel like she really could have been an interesting twist on the Afton archetype, if that makes sense. Even though Steelwool and Scott obviously didn't go down the whole Cult of Afton route that was kind of popular at the time, I still feel like there was lots of potential for Vanny as a character, whether you went in the direction of her being a mind-controlled victim, or just a copycat killer. Now, obviously, something about storytelling that everyone has a basic idea of is that at the beginning of the creative process, you have the most freedom, and then as you choose certain paths to go down, others get axed until eventually there's really only one main path you're following. And it just feels frustrating with Vanny, because there were so many interesting ways they could have gone, but they chose to basically not use her in her standout game, and also resolve her character in said game. I know she appears at the end of Help Wanted 2 to crush Glitchtrap, but I'm still not sure what to make of that whole cutscene, and overall it feels like the game is heading towards the Mimic as the main antagonist for now, or the new main antagonist as the replacement for Afton, when I still feel like that should have been Vanny's role. Hell, I would be fine if Vanny and the Mimic were like battling for who was the main antagonist, but no. She kinda just got unceremoniously removed from her own game through various cuts and restructuring stuff, and it's just tragic, man. Like, come on. I don't even really like the idea of Vanny that much. It's just that I feel like they clipped her wings before she even had a chance to fly. I don't know, this character deserves more love. Just go watch videos on her. Hell, I think it's funny that Into the Pit was going to have a Vanny reference, and then that was cut as well. Why? There's a lot more I could talk about with missed potential in Five Nights at Freddy's, but I don't really want to waste too much of your time today, and I feel like I just kind of went over some of the major stuff that bothers me. And if you have any other stuff that you think is missed potential in Five Nights at Freddy's, leave a comment down below, and I might make another video, or I might make one on purely Security Breach. It's up to you guys, sort of, and me, but partially you, so like let's say 50-50. I'd also like to apologize for not uploading in 3 weeks. I've been having a really bad depressive episode, and it was kind of just a big fight to just get out of bed and take care of my basic needs. So, video making wasn't very high on my priority list, and I apologize for that. In terms of what videos are coming next, I think this might be my last video essay for a little bit, and I was thinking about doing either a challenge run on Terraria or Elden Ring. So, I guess tell me what you guys want to see down below in the comment section, and I'll get right on it when I'm not wanting to, I don't know. Again, I'm still kind of going through that depressive episode, and while I am a lot better, it is still kind of a struggle to get stuff done, so I'll try my best. Now, before I go, I'd like to thank my financial supporters in form of Patreon members Golden One and Somebody, and my YouTube channel members, Wally73, Sven Biscuit, and Amarin98 for their financial support. It means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. And of course, I also want to thank anyone watching this video. Just spending some of your time today with me means the world. I hope you have a good day, a good night, or whatever time it is for you, and I'll see you on the flip side.